I want to share with you some data that I think most of us are going to find eye-opening and maybe even a little terrifying, but hopefully terrifying in a good way that gets us to rethink in a positive way how we're looking at our retirement and what we're hoping to do in retirement. So I'm going to get to the eye-opening, the terrifying data in a minute, but first I need to lay the groundwork and talk about what percent of Americans actually get to retire early and what drove that decision. So first, let's look at what percent of people get to retire early, and this is by Gallup. And you can see that as of 2022, only 1% of Americans age 40 to 44 are retired. That doesn't surprise me. 45 to 49, that jumps to 2%. Still, almost minuscule. And then 50 to 54 is where we start to see a jump, which that is 6% of all Americans when they're 50 to 54 are retired. And then 55 to 59, this is really the core of what I call the youth of your senior years. And so you can see a little over 10% of us get to retire between 55 and 59. And then 60 to 64, you can see about a third of us are retired then. And these numbers are not cumulative. So the people 60 to 64, that includes all the people that got to retire earlier and are now age 60 to 64. So for all 60 to 64-year-olds in the United States, 32% are retired. So those are folks that are retiring before the traditional age that we think about retirement here in the U.S. And then by 65 to 69, 70% of us are retired. And then it goes up from there. And surprisingly, 17% of 70, 74-year-olds are not retired. So that shows you what percent of us get to retire early and get to some extra years in what I call the youth of our senior years, where we have the most energy and we're the most active. So that's the good news. But let's look behind the scenes and see what percent of these people actually chose to retire early. So this is a report by Goldman Sachs, and it's called Retired Early, but not because they could afford it. And it's somewhat because they could afford it, but many people not. So the report says significantly 56% of retirees reported retiring earlier than planned. Notably, almost half of all retirees retired due to reasons out of their control, such as health issues, losing their job, or caring for family. And so those are the negative ones. But then the other half retired because they were tired of working, right? I think many of us can relate after working 20, 30, 40 years in our jobs. They hit the Social Security age, which enabled them to retire, or they were offered a retirement package. So half of the folks that are retiring early are doing so for kind of negative reasons. They were kind of forced to retire early, either because of family obligations to help out an aging parent or an adult child, or because they lost their job, things like that. So those are the folks that get to retire early. So we looked at what percent of people get to retire early and then why. And again, 55 to 59, that's 11% of people. And 60 to 64, by that age, about a third of us are retired. But again, about half of those people retired early even though they wanted to keep working. And the data I'm going to share is going to address the issue, do you want to retire early? How do you want to think about spending the youth of your senior years? And one of the biggest obstacles to retiring early is people think, I don't have enough money. The goals keep moving. Maybe somebody's goal was, when I get to $750,000 or $1 million, then I'm going to retire. And then they get there and they think, well, it'd be nice to have a buffer. And it is nice to have a buffer. But realize that those those goals keep moving. So if your goal was to get to $1 million, it's perfectly natural when you get there to think, well, if I had $1.5 million or if I had $2 million, I'd be much more comfortable. And that's true, you will be, but you're also using up, again, this youth of your senior years. And one of the things I want to share with you as a financial advisor for over 20 years, most people never feel financially ready to retire. It's hard to disconnect. It's hard. It's hard to take yourself out of what I call this river flow of money, which is the salary that we get. Right? At some point, we take ourselves out of the river, we go onto the shore, and then we go into the jungle, or we go to the next stage of our lives. But that river of money, where if we spend more money one month than we wish, well, it's less of an issue because we have more money coming in. Or if the stock market goes down, it's less scary because we still have a job, we still have new money coming in that we can invest at the low prices after the stock market has corrected. And so it's always scary to leave that river and to venture away from the river of money. So know that that's perfectly natural. There is at Boston College, they have a Center on Wealth and Philanthropy, and they study their biggest donors. They're people that make donations to their endowments. So these are very wealthy people, and I want to show you that it never changes. So this is a respondent from somebody that probably has about $500 million, $500 million. One respondent, the heir to an enormous fortune, talks about what matters in his life, but he also reports that he would not feel financially secure until he had $1 billion in the bank. So it never ends. If you have $1 million, you're going to want 2. If you have 2, you're going to want 5. If you have 500 million, you're going to want $1 billion. And so now let's get to the data that I think is scary for all of us, but I think it's scary in a good way. And first, let's look at the life expectancy, because the good news is our life expectancy continues to go up. You can see here for people that have gotten to 65 years old, and this is according to a report by LIMRA, you can see that 75% of people that get to 65 will make it, men will make it to 76, and 79% of women will make it to 79, 3/4 of people. So that's pretty good. Half of the men will make it to 83, half of the women will make it to 86, and almost 1/4 of the men will make it to 89 years old, and 1/4 of the women will make it to 92. So the good news is our lifespan's going up. But here's the terrifying part. Here's the wake-up call, and that is our healthy life expectancy. So while our life expectancy has gone up, how long can we expect to stay healthy before we have a major health issue? And this surprises people, right? If you look at the top 3 countries, this is data by the World Health Organization. If you look at the top 3 countries, Japan, Singapore, and Korea, they all have a healthy life expectancy above 73. Let's look at the next one. Hopefully the U.S. will be in there, and we can expect to be healthy almost to 73. But unfortunately, the next 3 is not the U.S. It's Switzerland, Cyprus, and Israel. And people in those countries can have a healthy life expectancy of over 72 years. The next 3 are Spain, France, and Iceland. And again, they're right about 72 years of age. So at this point, yes, Americans are living longer, but how long can we expect to be healthy? In Italy, it's almost 72, but here's the U.S. The U.S. is 66.1 years before we have a major health issue. And I don't know about you, but to me, that's startling. That's just 13 months after when we can expect to retire. 65, it's 13 months past 65 is what I'm trying to say. And that's not a whole lot of time in retirement. And so for me, that's a wake-up call to make sure that I'm taking full advantage of the youth of my senior years. And that's why I made this video up here, why waiting to 65 to retire might be a big mistake. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.